Welcome back to the Stephen Knight Show. Our guest tonight is the author of the book, Amanda, A Cautionary Tale of Alcoholism. It's based on his late wife's life and is described as a gripping page-turner that aims to destigmatize the treacherous disease that remains in the shadows. He's joining us tonight. Please help me welcome Andrew Culkin. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. Great to be here, Stephen.
I was telling you that I don't know how I got in my algorithm, but on TikTok, I start seeing your videos. And what I thought, the reason why I wanted to interview you is because you talk from the perspective of the family. You
Right.
know, you didn't obviously struggle with alcoholism, but your late wife did, who you were married to for 25 years. And
Correct.
you say that it was really the last 7 years where you really start to struggle.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, because it's a progressive disease.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I really probably saw all the different levels. There's four really distinct levels, and
Hmm.
she was probably a stage two when I first met her. And that means consistency. In other
Yeah,
words, drink on a regular basis, 6, 7 days a week.
yeah. And I remember you well, let me ask you, when did you, because obviously you know a lot more now, but when did you start noticing that she may have a problem with alcohol?
Well, I think I never really agreed with it. I think it was part of family culture with her. Her family all drank wine. They were from Canada. And for me, I grew up in an athletic background. My
Yeah.
dad was a high school back to basketball, football coach. And there wasn't a whole lot of drinking going on,
Yeah, yeah,
And when I met my wife, they all drank Chardonnay. It was just part of their, kind of part of their makeup. So that's what
yeah.
she did.
Hmm.
Um, she drank a couple glasses of wine at night. We were insurance brokers, and that escalated into bottle and then into bigger bottles, and then eventually anything she could get her hands on. So it's
Yeah.
progressive.
Did when did she when did you have a conversation with her about, okay, this is something we need to look at? How long have you been married at this point?
Yeah, but it was probably 8, 10 years into the marriage. It was really, it was starting to see some of the first breaks, embarrassing situations, going to friends' homes and we had to carry her out the front door, kind of thing,
Yeah.
I mean, more than normal drinking by the time we're, in your mid 30s at that point,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And did she ever, going through those experiences, like you having to carry her to a friend's house, etc., and because you speak very highly of her. You said she was a very sweet person, she was a very smart person, she was great in sales.
Right.
And again, you tell these stories not to disparage her, but to really as a cautionary tale to people who may be struggling with alcoholism, but also their families.
Right.
Um,
Well, that's why it's so confusing to people because drunks aren't necessarily angry, frustrated,
right,
mean-spirited people. She was a
yeah,
very kind, loving, empathetic person. That's why it was such a it was so hard to be around because you see this person struggling and they're very apologetic for the most part at the end of it.
right,
It didn't change. It got
yeah.
kept getting worse.
When did you have a serious conversation, or when did it become blatant that this is an issue that we have to deal
Well, the biggest issue she had what's called an ascites attack around 2009, and that's where your liver's starting to, have a problem, and you have a lot of fluid buildup. And she had like 50 pounds of fluid
with?
built up in her stomach. We ended
Yeah.
up having to take her to emergency because I didn't understand what was going on. That was
Mhm.
the first real health scare.
That was the first time. And did she become scared at that point?
You'd think.
Yeah, right.
She
Yeah.
kind of kept going. I mean, that was an incident, lasted like a month or so, and then she went back into it.
Hmm.
The real scare became with their first DUI in
Right. Tell that
2014.
story. Tell that
And
story.
unfortunately, that's 10 years too late looking back because I just didn't know. I mean, in my
Right.
ignorance at the time, I'd never been around an alcoholic, but in
Right.
2014, she got her first DUI.
Hmm.
And that caused her, she realized through the court system that it was probably time to go to a detox or rehabilitation facility.
Yeah.
That's when she first, that's really the first time she got professional help.
That was the first time.
That was the first
And
time. Yeah.
did you think she went for the DUI, or did she go for her own because she was getting scared, or why do you think, what was her motivation for
I
going
think
for
there's a combination. I think she was ready to get help. I think she was a little bit sick of it. I think she was embarrassed, and I think she also thought it would look good for the court if she was taking, working on herself in that direction.
it? Yeah.
I think she thought it would look good.
Yeah. And so she ended up getting 4 DUIs and went to rehab 7 times.
Right.
Um, anytime in that, if any of the rehab stints, do you feel like she was really making an effort to overcome this disease?
I think sometimes, I think maybe half of them, and
Mhm.
sometimes I honestly, she would go because she was detoxing. She didn't have any access to alcohol, and I wasn't going to get her anymore. So it was
Right.
either she was going to go to the emergency room, or the incentive was to put her in the detox, which the rehab was all part of it, so that she knows
Mhm.
that she could get Valium or medications coming down in a professional
Mhm.
setting, rather than dry heaving at home for 3 days and ending up in an ER anyways.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
Crazy decisions that you put yourself in, but that's a reality that you go through.
You tell the story of the last, I believe, the last vacation you all took together for your 25th wedding anniversary, and
Yeah,
you
that
Big
was near
Bear.
real near the end. That was yeah, that would have been August of 2019, right?
Right. And at this point, you were kind of apprehensive about. You talk about being so, being in social events with someone who's struggling with alcoholism. But you all had this trip planned. You made the trip, and tell about some of the things that happened on the trip.
Well, originally it was a 25th anniversary. We went up to Big Bear. I
Mhm.
just wanted to do something because it was our 25th,
Right, right, right.
and I
Yeah,
knew it was going to be a stretch. And she promised to be, to be all right. The day started decently. We had lunch. And there was a band playing outside. We went back to the hotel. Make a long story short, we went out that night and we had dinner, and she just started doing what she always did and ordering, pitchers of beer and wine, and I just wouldn't drink with her at all,
right.
and that became
Yeah,
an issue, and she got kind of inebriated, and then I decided I wanted to go back to the car and go back to the hotel that we had. And on the way back she ended up walking down the street and going into another bar. Well, I had to follow her just so that just to just to protect her from herself, and she
yeah,
ended up drinking too much there, and she passed out in the middle of the restaurant. And it became quite a scene. I had to get the owner and some of the waiters. We got her on a desk chair, and we rolled her out to the front, got her in the car, and it was just a big process. And
yeah.
the entire reason we were up there was kind of blown out the door.
Right, right.
You know,
I just want to talk about one other story. And again, you tell these stories. That's why I'm bringing them up because you tell them on your TikTok page and in the book.
in the book, yeah,
Um, Tell about this time. I think it was around 2015, 2016. Your mother, she was passing,
yeah,
and you all drive up to New York. You, your wife, and your son drive up to
right.
New York to be with the family. And what happened? Because she decided to stay back at the house, and you all went to the hospital. What happened then?
Yeah, that was probably the craziest month of my life, and that really
Yeah.
was the watershed for everything. Everything was different. My mother was dying, and we actually flew from California to New York,
Mm,
where I'd grown up, and we were in the hospital. My mother's really on her deathbed,
right.
breathing her last, and my wife hung back at my dad's house and cleaned out his liquor cabinet. He had some of these old dusty bottles. He didn't really drink, but they
Because
were
he
up
didn't drink,
in the
right?
kitchen. They had some wine bottles that had been sitting on the hearth for probably 20 years. I mean, it was all gone. And I found her passed out in the family room when I got home,
Hmm.
in a puddle of her own bodily fluids. And it was just such a boundary, crossing this boundary. It was very hard to take. And it didn't end there. It just kept
Right.
going.
But then you have a conversation with her because you were kind of saying, well, y'all can go on and kind of see New York,
Right.
and
Well, yeah. Well, from there, obviously my dad wasn't too happy with the situation. My
right,
brother was there. He said, "Why don't you guys, mom's stabilized. Why don't you guys
right,
take a trip for a while?" So we ended
yeah,
up going to Washington D.C. and
DC, yeah.
Gettysburg,
Mhm.
and we went in a hotel and we went out to dinner. She got drunk, and unfortunately, she crashed on the toilet in the hotel room and just destroyed the toilet. Water went all over the place, flooded the room out. You know, I was
Yeah.
just like, it was just a day in the life. We had to get another hotel room. The
And she,
hotel,
you couldn't wake her up, and so she stayed in the initial room.
right?
And
Yeah,
when she woke up, she thought you all had left her.
right. We had to stay. She had to stay in the first room because we couldn't get her up to get to the second room.
Right.
The hotel was nice enough to give us a second room because the room was flooded out, and she was passed out in the bed. She woke up the next morning, and I called her up. She was like yelling at me because we thought we left
Right.
her.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
sad. It's just a
Yeah.
sad
Mhm.
disease.
Let me ask you because obviously, you've been in the marriage, and then again, you said the last 7 years is when it really got bad.
Right.
What made you stay with your wife during the struggles?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. In fact, I have a video on top of my page that says, "Why did I stay?" And a
Yeah,
lot of it, a lot of it was certainly the last years were self-preservation. Because I knew that if she went, it's not a situation when you're married, you can take her to the bus station, say,
right.
"Here's $100 and have a nice life." It doesn't
Exactly.
work that way.
Right, right, right.
She probably in reality from I'd say about 2015, 16 till she passed away in early 220. I mean, if she was on her own for more than a few days, she probably would have drank herself into to death, really, because that almost happened when we went to we were looking at colleges when my son was
Right.
in high
Yeah.
school. We were
Yeah.
gone for 4 or 5 days, and we came home, and she was almost dead just from drinking herself into oblivion. And she was under house arrest at that time.
Right, right.
You know.
And you also talk about when the police came because she was on house arrest at one point, and the police came to the home to do a search or some kind of search, and you
Well, yeah,
collected
they were doing a spot check.
spot check. Yeah.
They have to do a spot check, and she was under house arrest for I don't know her third or fourth DUI. It gets kind of gray after a while,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but they had to come in and check everything. Um, yeah, that was.
You had no clue that that was going to happen. You didn't know
And
they were.
I didn't realize that your house is an extension of the jail
Right.
when
Yeah.
you're underneath house arrest. And she hadn't been checking in. She just hadn't, all you have to do is check in once a day or every couple of days, and she wasn't
Mhm.
even doing that.
Yeah.
You know.
What was obviously, she lost her life, but what was it for you watching your wife decline, as a result of this disease? How did you, as a husband, as a father, how did you deal with that during that period?
Well, I think you kind of get into your own corners. I mean, I ended up kind of developing a life outside the marriage. I mean, I worked out a lot. I had my own business. We really kind of started living two separate lives. It was really my son and myself, and my
Yeah.
wife was on the couch drinking. I mean, I would come home from work, make dinner, and my son and I would have dinner at the table, and my wife wouldn't even come because she was too inebriated. Honestly, the last few years were very, very sad. It was just a sad, way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on my way out when she actually did pass away. I was in the process of separating when she did pass
You
away.
were. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did he deal with watching his mother? What
I,
conversation?
again, I mean, he was a good student. He had his own life. He had me. Not to toot my own horn, but
Right.
he had one parent that was solid,
Hmm.
and he's very anti-alcohol, very anti-drug as a result. You know,
Yeah.
he's done well now. He was going to be 25
Wow.
in March.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
graduated from college last year. He's got his own business, his own house. I mean, he's doing well. So it didn't, I think we've both moved on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you said she was a shell of what she was towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't recognize her. She's bloated. It's just sad. The thing is, it's a mental health disease, and the reason why I talk about it in such
Right.
detail is because it's so relatable for so many people. It's
Mhm.
a warning for people who are, in recovery to stay
Yeah.
in recovery because I
Yeah.
know it scares the crap out of a lot of people online when they tell these stories. You
Mhm.
know.
Exactly. Yeah, it will. And if you don't mind sharing how your wife ultimately passed away.
Yeah, well, she was in her. I dropped her off in her seventh rehab, and I went into Los Angeles. We tried a different rehab. It was a residential facility. It was about 100 miles away. I wanted to get as far away as I could. What the plan was to put her in this residential facility for 30 days, and then I was going to put her in a sober living facility in LA for about a year. And at that time, I was going to really separate and give her a time, an opportunity to get back into her own life.
Yeah.
Just that's, and then I kind of just, I needed to figure an exit strategy.
Right.
She was in the rehab one day and she fell down a flight of stairs in the facility. And I didn't know it at the time, but they put her in ICU. And about 10 days in the hospital called me up in the middle of the night and said that her heart had stopped. They wanted to know if I wanted to resuscitate. I didn't even know she was in the hospital. I thought she was back. I thought she was back at the rehab.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
didn't really explain it to me. I thought she's just going to go to the emergency and then they're going
Right.
to take her back to the rehab. I was like, wow, it was a serious problem. She ended up having 12 operations because of the fall ruptured her intestinal tract and caused a lot of infection in her vital organs, lung, her liver, pancreas, kidneys. She's on kidney dialysis. They had a tracheotomy so that she could breathe and they could feed her. They had feeding tubes, and it just looked like, a Frankenstein museum when you walked in there.
Yeah.
Just a sad way. Eventually, what took her was toxic shock and low blood pressure. Eventually, all the stress on her body just made her, it was overworked her heart, and ultimately passed away that way.
Yeah. And so I know you talked about, well, let's, before we get to that, tell us how you felt, because I'm sure that you were afraid that day could come, that she would
Yeah,
succumb to the disease.
yeah,
So
in the
when
back
it
of your in
finally
the back of your
happened,
head, yeah.
yeah, when it finally happened, were you shocked? Like, what was going through your mind when she passed?
Relief.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they say, it sounds like all this craziness. Was it relief? Oh, it's absolutely your relief. It's
Yeah.
like somebody's given your life back.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you love the person, you don't love the disease, and what it's
Right.
doing to yourself and to your world is just really an impossible, unlivable situation.
Yeah.
And I know so many families go through this too. You know,
Exactly. Exactly. So when did you decide to take this tragedy and turn it into something to help others? Not only help people who are dealing with alcoholism, but also the families. Because we all know that when there's an alcoholic in the family, the whole family has to deal with it. So when did you
right?
decide to take this tragedy and
Yeah,
turn it into something positive?
yeah, it's definitely a family disease. Yeah,
Yeah.
almost immediately. In fact, I think I wrote within 6 months of her passing. I think I had the first 120 pages,
Wow.
which I later pretty much threw away because it was more of an angry rant than it was a book. And
And
I
I'm sure
really,
you were still grieving at the time, right?
yeah, yeah, but I was still just, yeah, you're in shock for about
Yeah.
5, 6 months. You really
Yeah.
are. It's just, I did a lot of, the thing is, that's just when COVID hit. COVID,
Yeah.
COVID
Yeah.
hit like a week after she passed away too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
I really started writing and getting into this mission pretty quickly because I realized I had a story and a unique perspective to share with the world, really.
Yeah. And you also started a coaching program called There's Alcoholic in the Family. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I have a coaching program. It's called There's an Alcoholic in the Family. It's really designed to bring the family in and the alcoholic. So we start with about a 45-minute to an hour call, really delve deep into what's going on with that person. It's a 9-week course. They spend 9 weeks with me, and then there's a whole online course with workbooks that educates the family and brings everybody, up to speed. You want
Mhm.
to have a family that can hold that person accountable and that everybody's on the same page. So like we're
Yeah.
going to get healthy together rather than you go fix yourself and come back. We're going to do this together, kind of thing. At least be on the same page.
What happens when, because I think some people, when they think about, I think sometimes they can't see the today or see tomorrow. They look long term. It can be overwhelming if someone decides that they do want to stop drinking or whatever the case may be. What advice do you give to that person?
The biggest threat for most people is just overthinking. Like, oh my God, I could never drink again in my life. What am I going to
Mhm.
do? I
Yeah.
mean, that's why it is truly one day at a time. I
Yep.
mean, all you can control is today.
Yeah.
Today becomes tomorrow, and you want to get those days to turn into weeks, the weeks to turn into months and years. But just all you can control is right now. It's all you got.
Yeah. That's all you got. That's all you
That's all
got.
you got.
That's all you got. And so you talk about the different stages of alcoholism. Um, and you say that it's harder to, I mean, it's achievable, but it's much harder when they're in stage three. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's why it's so much of what I do is really about awareness and if you have a family member who's starting to head down that road, to become aware and have those tough conversations before they get into like late stage 3, which is when they become in denial that they have a problem. They'll be very deflective and they'll gaslight you. It's like, I don't have the problem, everybody else has the problem that
Right.
I drink. And when they're at that point, when they're not even willing to come to the table to get help,
Mhm.
the only person that's going to help them is them, and they have to hit a rock bottom. And for some people, rock bottom is not making it.
Yeah.
Now that's why you want to get there before.
So your advice, if they have a spouse or a friend or whomever who they feel is struggling with this disease, what's the first step? What's the first step? How do they address that person?
First thing is really to sit down and have a conversation, one-on-one conversations. I think some of the most productive conversations we had were, let's break this down. This is what you've been doing for the last week. It's getting worse. You've been drunk every day for the last week. Look what it's doing to your son. Look what it's doing to our relationship. Look what it's doing to your health. You have all these problems. Let's make a plan to move forward. You need to get into a detox rehab. Maybe we need to go to AA or Smart Recovery or Women for Sobriety, some group therapy, which is essential. You need to be around other people that are recovering. And you need to reinvent yourself. You need to, walk, run, jog, something physical.
And you said even if you have to relocate, move
right?
from
If you got to relocate, if the problem is your family,
yeah,
you're not a tree. You can move.
Let me ask you, where was Amanda's her family outside of her married family? Where was her family at during this time?
Yeah, well, her family, her parents were a little bit older. In fact, they died not shortly after she did, unfortunately. But they lived in Oceanside. They lived an hour away. Unfortunately, they were never really much of a help, and they really never involved. They just kind of washed their hands of it. Some
Did
of
they
the
have any
reasons,
reaction to the book?
yeah, I have a little bit of it in the book. I kind of left them out of it because they're not a real big part of the story.
Yeah.
The thing is with Amanda, a lot of people talk about the origins, and some of it was some of the trauma that she had when she was
When she was like 16? Yeah.
16. I mean, she was kind of shunned from her family because she had a relationship she was 16, her boyfriend was 19. She actually got pregnant, and she had to they made her not keep it, and they got the boyfriend in trouble, and they booked her up to an all-girls school in Northern California. It was very traumatic for her.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, wow. And so that was the root of
A lot of
it.
drama, man. A lot of drama
Yeah,
in this
a lot.
life.
And you said, I saw in the video, you said that if you would have known what you know now a lot sooner, you probably could have helped her get her life back on track.
Oh yeah, I mean,
What's
if I knew, I wish I had somebody like me to talk to
yeah,
20
right.
years ago.
Yeah.
She should have been in a rehab facility detox in 2004 instead of 2014. I think
Mm,
she would have had a much better fighting chance. She was younger, and the alcohol hadn't taken over her body and mind as much.
yeah. What advice do you give if a person talks to a loved one and says, "I think you have this problem. We need to address this now," and they're in denial and they don't want to do it? What advice?
Yeah, all you can do is create boundaries. You can say, well, if this is your answer, then maybe we need to reevaluate this relationship.
Mm,
The thing is, it's easier said than done, but it
right.
depends. I mean, if it's a parent and you got a child, you can't abandon
Yeah.
somebody, but
Yeah.
it's time for tough love. It's
Yeah.
time we're not going to support you emotionally, financially, or any other way. And if
Hmm.
you're a parent, you have leverage on your kid, and you should use that leverage, because
Yeah.
that's when they need it. A
Yeah.
spousal relationship's a different structure. But you do need to. I see, making ultimatums is not going to work.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
tough. You can't force somebody into something. You can't want something more for somebody than they want it for themselves.
Hmm.
You know,
And you
that's
said, because you said people would ask you, why didn't you stop her from drinking? Why did you let her order? And you said, she's an adult. I can't tell her what to do.
I mean, the thing is, the extent that we went to try and get alcohol away from her,
And you could never find out where she got this, where she was getting alcohol from.
it made no difference. It would make no difference. And the
Yeah.
thing is, I have a lot of alcoholics on the channel
Yeah.
where I do a lot of my material,
Right.
and they all say, "Yeah." He goes, "We're going to get it anyways."
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make any difference what you do. We'll find it.
Wow. Wow.
You could put an alcoholic in the middle of the North Pole, and they'll find it.
They'll get to it, right?
They'll get
Right.
to it.
When you completed writing Amanda, A Cautionary Tale of Alcoholism, was it a release for you once the book was finalized, once it was out there? What was your feeling once you completed it?
It
And it was
was. It was. It's a. It's an accomplishment. I really. It's a good. A lot of it is the last few years of her life, which are the most important ones. The original book was almost twice as much. It was like 600 pages. This one is
yeah,
300.
yeah.
We cut a lot of the early stuff out, and a lot of it kind of be redundant, like all these one horror story after another for
Mhm.
200 pages. I'm sure it gets a
Cool.
little redundant, so we did cut it down a little bit. But yeah, I'm proud of the book. You know,
Mm,
it's selling a lot of units. It's going
yeah,
international. And I'm working on a TEDx talk this year, which
nice.
I'm really looking forward to creating a scenario where I think people that have 2 or more DUIs shouldn't be allowed to buy alcohol. So I think we should get on our license or on our IDs, maybe some indication that we shouldn't be selling alcohol to people who are dying from alcohol.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Let me ask you, how were you able to heal after your wife passed? You know, you've been through, 25-year marriage, watched her suffer really for 7 years, and then she succumbs to it. How were you able to heal for yourself?
I think initially I did a lot of traveling. I mean, luckily I was in a position to be able to do that. I mean, I visited my sister, my parents. We went, God, I went to, I think the month after she left, I went to Las Vegas. I went to Arizona, New York, Georgia, Florida, Texas,
Mm,
Vermont, uh, Boston, New York City,
yeah.
Maine. I just tooled around for a while.
Mm,
I
yeah.
was visiting friends that I had all over I just needed to get out of the environment. I think
Yeah. That
that
makes
helped
sense.
me a lot. And then actually writing the book,
Yeah.
just sitting down, being able to focus on it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know the work that you're doing is very important because there's so many people that walk around, they don't know that they're struggling. They think
Right.
I'm just having fun on the weekends. I'm just having a drink after work. I'm just, and but what you talk about really is the long-term effect and how it can really impact the life, not only your life, but your loved ones around you. And and what it does to a family. What it does to a family. What closing remarks would you say to anyone struggling or and the family? What would you say to them?
The most important thing is to identify that somebody in the family has an issue and then to
Mhm.
have a conversation and it really set up a plan of action
Yeah.
and identify it's affecting your grades, it's affecting your job, it's affecting your health. We're worried about you. We love you, but it's time to do something about this rather than just let it go and to continue. I mean, if someone had cancer and they had stage 1 or 2 cancer, you're not going to say, okay, well, let's just wait till it gets to stage 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's no different. It's a
Yeah.
disease.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So where can we find out more about there's an alcoholic in the family? That's your coaching program. Where can we find out about that?
The book, the book, we have video. It's called, you can find it on Amazon. It's also on my website, www.analcoholicinthefamily.com. If you're looking for the ebook in the United States, you can find it on Barnes and Noble, Apple, and the Amazon website.
All
And I
right.
hope to have a audio book out later this year. That's another whole nother project, but yeah, I'll do that too.
Well, you're doing the Lord's work. I know that. But our thanks goes out to Andrew Culkin, excuse me, for joining us tonight. Amanda, A Cautionary Tale of Alcoholism is available. And can they all still go to Amanda, acautionarytale.com?
Yes, you can get it at my website, www.analcoholicinthefamily.com.
Family,
That's the one. An
alcoholicfamily.com.
alcoholic in the family. That's actually the website, and then there's a PayPal button as soon as you open the site.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us and telling your story, your wife's story, your family story. And we'll be right back after this.